going live. Oh, we are live. How's everybody doing on here? I see some of you guys are already on here. Already with the questions. Haz is late. I'm only 3 minutes late. You should see what some of these other YouTube guys do. They set a stream for like 7 o'clock. They show up at like quarter to eight. I think I'm relatively on time. Um, okay, guys. So before I cover the topic at hand, I'm going to do the usual thing where I let people, you know, join and get comfortable, and then we'll start the topic at hand. We're going to be talking about becoming a professional dog trainer because I have experience on both sides of this, and that not only have I become a professional dog trainer, I have made other professional dog trainers. And that's a big thing where I'm not just speaking about my personal experience, I'm going to be speaking about the experience of training multiple people to become dog trainers and people that are actually able to train dogs in various areas to the level that they can actually make, a living doing it. I think a lot of people on the internet, they say things. They'll say things like, you know, I train, I train dogs for 30 years, and what did they really do for 30 years? In many cases, next to nothing. And then, oh, I've trained lots of people to train dogs. What did their students do? Again, in many cases, their students really haven't done anything. Their students aren't able to, you know, make a living for themselves in the profession because they didn't get the skills necessary to do that, or their students aren't even able to go work for another trainer. Anybody who, knows anything about my business, they know anything about me, they know I've made a lot of dog trainers. So I think I can speak quite well on this topic um, because, the success is pretty undeniable when it comes to that. So we'll be getting into all of that. Military member trying to become a dog trainer. Yeah, so many ex-military guys go into the profession. In the United States, I assume that's where you are. There are 330 million people. Okay, to say it's a good market is an understatement. I don't think there's very many places in the United States you can go if you um, know how to train dogs and not make a good living. And I'm talking like at least six figures, if you have like your head on somewhat straight. So, it's one of these things, and it's not about the money. I'm just saying the money to give it credibility, right? Like when I say make a living as a dog trainer, I mean like make a living as a dog trainer. I don't mean like, make a living working at McDonald's, if you understand what I'm saying. Because if you really understand what you're doing, this is a skill that's in high demand. How many millions and millions of dogs are there across North America? Also across Europe, right? That need good training. Currently a canine handler in the Navy. Yeah, that's good experience. Listen, anything you can point to, then say, look, I was a police canine guy. I was a military canine guy. For sure, you're going to learn some crossover skills. You have to understand though, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, and I see a lot of people struggle with this when they're training. You have to understand that the vast majority of your clients, they're pets, right? And what they need and what they're looking for in terms of obedience and lifestyle with the dog is very different from the working canine, right? Working canine, people tend to assume a lot of these dogs have really good control, like really good obedience. And in most cases they don't. Like the obedience on a lot of the working canine, whether we're talking police dogs or military dogs, right? It's pretty and again, there's always examples of the alternative. But for the most part, I find it's pretty like low level obedience, like in many cases. Now, of course, there are some departments and there's some handlers. Their obedience and their control and the bite work and the nose work and everything is super on point. But in many cases, you see dogs with kind of very like average to low level obedience, but dogs that they take to the task at hand, whether it's tracking or detection or whatever it is, and the dog's able to do that, right? And you really don't need obedience for that. You just need the dog to understand his job and to be motivated to do his job. So oftentimes, people tend to assume that a working canine has this, super um, advanced level of obedience, and in many cases they do not. So when you're dealing with pets, it's all about obedience. It's all about creating, functional results that the owner is able to then, utilize to have an easier life with his or her dog, and that's the big thing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Macedonian gangster. How's it going, man? You're always on my streams. I just know you because of your name. It's an interesting name. I don't know if you're really a gangster and if you're really in Macedonia, but either way, is it okay for an 18-month-old Rottweiler to be very social with strangers and other male dogs? I mean, what do you mean by okay? Like the dog is, for me, I don't allow my dogs to socialize or engage with other people and with other dogs because it's counterproductive to what I want with them. But I mean, if your dog likes doing that and you're fine with it, then that's what it is, I guess. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about becoming a professional dog trainer. So, as I said, I have experience on both ends of this, in that I became a professional dog trainer kind of by accident, and then in the process of scaling my business and building the brand, so to speak, I've trained a lot of dog trainers as well, and some of them obviously still work for me. I'm in the process of training more dog trainers as we speak. Some of them have come done apprenticeships and then gone on and done their own thing. Some that have worked for me are now doing their own thing. And I've got a lot of them, like I said, they're doing very well for themselves using the system that they learned here and the principles that they learned here as the foundation for what they do. And by that, I mean, I'm not getting people that came to me to learn how to become a dog trainer that had if any, like many cases, complete blank slates we're talking about. And, we're talking like within, a year, like they became pretty decent dog trainers in some cases. Okay. Of course, there's a certain amount of personal skill and ability, just like with anything. Some people have it and it's really easy for them, and some people don't. Um, that's something, of course, that you have to keep in mind, as with any skill or talent. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to talk to you guys not about all the steps because really there's so much involved, right? But fundamentally, there are a number of things that I've seen with people becoming professional dog trainers. And I'm going to talk about things to avoid. So I've had a lot of people assume that I've had a lot of people kind of do it for the wrong reasons. Okay. And by for the wrong reasons, I mean they do it exclusively for money. Now, there's nothing wrong with money. I like money just as much as anybody else likes money. Um, but if that's your primary focus, and I've seen that, right? Like guys get in, I've had a couple guys, they came, they worked for me, and they said, oh, wow, they see the money in it, and they just, you know, get as much as they need to get, working here the bare minimum, and then they go off and they do their own thing and they try to make money doing it. And in many cases, just because there's such a lack, or there was anyways, such a lack of dog trainers, they were able to get the money doing it. But you could really see like the training that they did, they were bare minimum. There's a bunch of these guys, unfortunately. And look, half of a decent system is better than no system at all. And these guys obviously didn't have anything in the beginning, but you saw a lot of these guys. They were just money. They were just in it for the money. They didn't have an appreciation for excellence. Okay. Like they didn't strive for excellence in their training. They strove for let's just get through it. Let's just slap it together, bare bones. Let's just, do what we got to do to, just get the money and put together a product that really is very shoddy. It's not fair for the dog. It's not super fair for the handler of the dog, but hey, it's enough, and I got paid and whatever else. And these are the people, in my opinion, they don't belong in dog training. Terrible dog trainers. And their work is always, listen, you see the dog next to them. If you don't know what you're looking at, maybe it looks decent to you, but to me, it looks like the dog's beaten on a regular basis with a 2x4. Not saying that they're doing that. Usually these are the e-collar jockeys, right? They take an e-collar on. They cut all the corners in the training, and they don't spend the time on the proper foundation on building a relationship with the dog and teaching the dog everything. They just slap an e-collar on a dog, put a slip lead on, and zap zap zap, and you've got this dog that's kind of maybe sort of doing things next to you, and to the uninformed it looks good. This is shitty dog training. I hate this. This is low level stuff. And unfortunately, there were some guys I ran into that were like that. And part of the reason they left was because I was always riding them hard. You can't get away with that nonsense with me. You know, if I see you half-assing it, if I see you not rewarding the dog, if I see you not building properly with the dog, there's going to be questions that need to be answered. And this is something that I warn you against. Is there money in it? Of course, there's money in it. But you better not be in it for the money. Otherwise, it's just going to become another job. And when it becomes another job for you, guess what? After a while, you're going to hate to take those dogs out. You're going to hate to train those dogs. And guess who's going to really suffer in the end? The dogs and the owners that are entrusting you with the dogs. So you must have pride. Now, the best dog trainers that have come from my program are the people that take pride in their work. They take great pride in their work. Their ego is tied into the work. And I know everybody wants to pretend like ego is a bad thing. Ego is not a bad thing. Ego has got me where I got today. Because for me, I don't want to be associated with anything inferior. I do not like to be associated with any training that is shoddy. I don't like to be associated with anything less than the highest level of excellence in any form of training, right? And that's what we strive for. And you have to put that pressure on the people that work with you and that work for you to achieve that level at all times. And I work best with the people that also have that in their mind, that they're going to, I would have guys that would compete here. They would be like, you know what, my down is going to be the fastest down. And their dogs they would be like, showing off with the dogs they were training here, and showing, oh, look at his heel entry. Oh, that was a slick heel entry. Oh, look at that recall. That's a sexy recall. Like every piece of the training they took great pride in, and they would compete with each other to make a better and better and better product. Okay, and what you don't understand, a lot of people don't understand, the best product comes from a combination of two things: motivation, the dog likes it, the dog wants it; obligation, the dog understands that he needs to do it as well, it's not an option. When those two things blend together in the right profusion, you have a very good product. The other thing was empathy. Okay, I know Has talking about empathy, pretty crazy, right? Listen, when you have a dog who's fearful, when you have a dog who's insecure, when you have a dog who has aggressive outbursts, you have to understand that dog. You have to understand why he's doing those things. You have to understand what you need to do in order to get him to the best place that he can go. And maybe he's not going to be on the same level as the happy-go-lucky lab that you're training, or the super amped up German Shorthair Pointer, that's like fast as lightning. But you can get that fearful, nervous, insecure, anxious dog to a level that is eminently better than where he's at now. You can get him out of the blue juice, right? And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, and they don't give the dog that honor. They either become, I see this a lot, guys that are afraid of the dog, right? The dog, maybe he has a bit of a history, gets a little bit aggressive from time to time, and they're always flinching around the dog and overreacting to everything the dog is doing. And that's because they don't really understand where the behavior is coming from. So of course they overreact to all the behavior because they're not sure where's it coming from, right? And these are the people that tend to inadvertently just make the problem worse because they're twitchy, they're nervous, they're scared of the dog, so on and so forth. So, people that kind of can relax, can understand where the dog's coming from, are cautious, because I've had guys, that are the opposite, right? Like they're not cautious at all. Like they have no conception of like what a dog under the wrong circumstances can do to you. So, you want the right level of caution, but at the same time, you also want someone who's not going to be overly afraid, flinchy, jumping at the wrong times, and encouraging the bad behavior or escalating situations that are maybe a little bit bad to becoming a lot bad, right? So we want to prevent people that are anyone who just thinks they're going to get in this and make a whole heap of money. Go do something else. You know what I mean? Like it'll be better for you, better for the dogs. And at this point in time, anyways, the market's getting quite. It's not like what it was when, let's say, maybe even 4 or 5 years ago. It's certainly a lot more saturated than what it was. And if you're not in here to pursue excellence, if you're not in this job to really improve the life of the dogs, improve the life of the the handlers and so on and so forth, you're not really going to get anywhere. Okay, you have to take pride in your work, and you also have to be critical of yourself. So, one thing that I am, if you know me, you know I'm extremely self-critical. I'm always looking for the downside. Okay, probably to the extent that maybe it's a little bit much sometimes. The downside is, where is the failure point in the training? Why a lot of training that you guys see online, I call it the smoke and the mirrors training. It looks good in the video and whatever else, but if you know anything about dogs, if you know anything about training, you know it doesn't really apply to the real world. The handler isn't going to be able to actually use that training in the real world. Maybe it looks sexy. An example of this would be teaching a dog to heel to following a ball. Okay, like you guys have watched my videos. You can get a dog prancing, his head's up in the air, he's stargazing. It looks beautiful, right? The sport style focus healing. This is not something that is useful for a handler in the real world. It's not something their dog is going to do on his half-hour walks twice a day through downtown Toronto or wherever it is that he happens to live. Useless work, all the fancy stuff, a lot of the clicker work and all this type of this. It's useless for the most part in the real world. It doesn't apply. Is it good to use some of these pieces in the foundation to build the dog, to build his understanding? Is it fun for the dog? Sure. But does it apply to the real world? Can the handler use that in the real world with any level of reasonable success? In many cases, the answer is no, right? So, when it comes to becoming a professional dog trainer, you have to be extremely critical of your system. You have to be extremely critical of your work. And every piece of work that you put out, you need to be able to evaluate it. Where did I go wrong? What could I do better? What do the handlers need versus what do I want, right? Does the handler want what I'm able to provide? Does the market want what I'm able to provide? If they don't, what can I provide that they do want? These are things that you need to ask yourself. And in many cases, you know, people aren't very honest about this. So whether you have people that are cutting corners and basically being tool jockeys, and I hate that, right? Hate that. I hate that. I know I've already talked about it. I hate that shit. People just slap an e-collar on a dog and zap, 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 and oh, look, he's a good boy now. Yeah, he's a good boy because he's walking on eggshells and he's just terrified at all times that, you're going to light his ass up. Um, and then you've got the other side of it where it's all smoke and mirrors and there's no real training going on. And then you got the lazy ones, the people that do have the talent, right? The trainers that do have the talent, and I've run into a few of these guys as well. Um, they do have the talent, but you always catch them cutting corners. You always catch them, doing the least possible. I guess they kind of also fall into the first category, right? Just lazy training, and it prevents them from achieving excellence because they're not really, again, they're not super motivated. They're just simply looking to get from point A to point B in the fastest way possible and then pretend like what they're doing is some kind of awesome thing. So, yeah, being self critical, examining your work, constantly upgrading your skills, that's another thing, right? Like I've spoken about this before. As a trainer, you have to assume somebody else does it better in some capacity. They're doing something better than you, right? And you have to actively and aggressively search for that better on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. I attend seminars regularly. Sometimes I attend seminars I have zero interest in. I'm going to 2 seminars in the next month, right? Because I might think I know how to do something, but I guarantee you somebody else knows how to do it better, right? And if you're not actively and aggressively looking to upgrade your skills, good luck to you. I constantly am changing what I'm doing. I'm constantly tweaking what I'm doing. I'm constantly looking at my system and thinking about how I can improve it, expedite it. Sometimes I'll try something new and I'll actually say, you know what? No, the old way was better. I'll discard it and go back to doing something the older way. Or I'll say, hey, look, this new way, I think it's better. It's improving the relationship with the dogs. It's improving the finished product. It's expediting the training, right? All these types of things. So you have to have that critical approach. And then you have to be able to work from a framework. Here's the thing. I took the hard route in dog training. To become a dog trainer, I didn't I didn't get anybody's system. Okay? I wasn't an apprentice under anybody. I didn't work for another dog trainer. Okay? I didn't have a mentor, so to speak. I put it all together. The training system that I do here, I put it all together using many different things that I learned in many different places. Some of it my own invention, or some thing that I took from another trainer and then tweaked it a little bit to suit what I was doing here, and just basically pieces from everywhere. And I put it together to make a system that I'm happy with, that my clients have been happy with for the last few years, and that all the trainers that work for me and that worked for me are now using in their training systems, whether they're on their own now or they're still with me. And the training system that I have, I believe strongly in framework. Okay, you shouldn't just do things. I see a lot of trainers, they just go out there every day and they just do shit. There's no system that they're working from. There's no step by step. It doesn't have to be specific because every dog is different, but there should be a rough framework that you work from, and a rough understanding of fundamental principles, foundation principles that control everything you do in your training system. If you have that, and if you understand dogs, how they learn, how they think, and their behavior, as well as the desirable outcomes that people want, you're going to be able to establish a framework that is successful and will be successful for not just one type of dog, right? Oh, he doesn't like food. What do we do? He's not a food dog. Well, you better have something if the dog doesn't like food. Oh, he doesn't like to play. What do you do? He doesn't have ball drive. Okay, well, you better have a plan. Oh, he's really depressed if you make pressure on him with the e-collar because maybe he had a bad experience. Okay, well, you better have a plan for that, right? Like, you need to have a system that helps people across a broad spectrum, that helps breeds across a broad spectrum. If your system only works for a certain type and a certain breed of dog, it's no good. In the pet training space, you're going to deal with everything from Chihuahuas and English Bulldogs to Belgian Malinois and Great Danes. You need to be ready for all of them, and you need to have a rough framework that works for all of them. So this is something that I strongly recommend: is find someone with a system, especially at this point in time. You know, dog training has progressed a long way, especially from when I started. There are people that have successful systems. Go study from successful people that are successful in your field. Look, I know you might really like X agility trainer, but guess what? You want to train pets. You want to, that agility trainer, she might be really good at agility, but you want to train pets and you want to do behavior modification. Well, you better learn from someone who knows how to do that stuff. You better find someone who's successful at that, right? You want to do protection training? Well, that person's doing only obedience. They don't know how to do protection. So again, like, you need to go and be successful at that. What's going on? Are you making this video because you're working on a dog trainer's course? I am going to work on a dog trainer's course. I'll tell you this though, if if as a dog trainer I would have killed, and this is a shameless plug, I would have killed to have access to my training system. And guess what? You can. You go to my online training. I don't hide anything on there, guys. Everything from reactive dogs to my obedience to my puppy training, it's all on there, right? If I had access to that as a beginning pet trainer, instead of having to kind of figure things out the hard way, step by step, I would have killed for that. I would have put me ahead. When you could find someone that's already figured things out, right? Doesn't mean that you have to stay with what they're doing forever. It means now you have a jump off point where you're a lot farther ahead than that person was in the beginning. Now you're basically getting a head start in the race. So my obedience training system, a lot of it's already online. A lot of it's already available on my online courses. Oh, I did finish a book recently. I'm working on the whole publishing and all that type of stuff. I got to get that done. So there'll even be a book soon, hopefully. These things are available now. Like, we don't have to guess. We don't have to play hard to get with this type of stuff. It's also there. So you know, it's one of these things where there's a lot of the days of things being hidden and hard to find are over. You can now get access to this information, whether it's my information or somebody else's information. And that's the other thing. Become proficient across a broad spectrum. If you're a dog trainer and you say, I only want to ever train pets and I only ever want to do behavior modification, I have no interest in anything else. Well, guess what? If you become proficient and you develop an understanding of how to do other things within dog training, whether it's various types of competition, dog sport, whether it's bite work, nose work, all these types of things. If you develop an understanding and you actually practice in these other fields, regardless of whether or not you have a personal desire to make money doing that, you will become an exponentially better dog trainer. The best dog trainers that I have produced here are ones that engage in more than just training the pets. Don't get me wrong, I've had some very good, and I still have some very good pet dog trainers, but the ones that dabble in the other stuff, in the competition work, they do some bite work, they dabble in these other things, and they have a fundamental understanding of these principles in these other things. These are the trainers now that begin to level up, right? Because they have such a higher level understanding. Because the more spectrums you become proficient working with dogs in, the more you become better as a dog trainer. My ability as a helper, okay, as a decoy, has exponentially helped my ability to deal with dogs when they're handler aggressive or when they're reactive. So people that struggle with dogs that are aggressive, very easy for me to deal with them because I have an intimate understanding of aggression, not just in stopping it, but actually in creating it. So if you know how to make something, you also quickly learn how to stop something. And the mystique of aggression. There's so much mystique around aggression, for instance. There's no mystique, really. If you understand aggression, if you understand what motivates the dog, there's very little mystique involved in it. And how to deal with it effectively and in a way that's, extremely efficient, it becomes very, very simple if you understand how dogs think and learn and what motivates them to be aggressive across a variety of contexts, right? And it's the same thing with anything. If you understand competition obedience and you really know competition obedience to some degree or other, you are going to become better at pet obedience. Goes without saying, right? Because your level of understanding and how to make precision and develop more motivation in the dog is now higher. So I greatly encourage you, if you're a trainer or if you aspire to be a trainer, do things that are outside of your specific area of expertise once you have that basic understanding and grow your skills, grow your abilities. The best trainers have proficiency across a variety of spectrums, not just one. So I think we'll summarize, okay? A couple of the big mistakes that I see, that these are the biggest mistakes I see dog trainers make, all right? Being lazy in their training, all right? Just cutting corners in order to get the money the fastest, making promises to clients that are unrealistic. Like, hey, I'm going to do a 2 week off leash obedience training package with your dog. Really? What are you going to do for 2 weeks to properly off leash obedience train it? I know what you're going to do. You probably shouldn't be doing that. Okay? It's not good for the dog. It's not ethical, in my opinion. It's just generally a bad idea. So, 2 week obedience training packages. So making promises you can't keep. Um, you know, like I said, cutting the corners, not developing your skills, just doing the basic, the bare minimum to get by. You know, I think I already mentioned coming into the profession just for money. Good luck to you. It's going to become miserable for you. It's going to become miserable for the animals that have to work with you. And then not developing your skills across a broader spectrum, not being self-critical, and assuming that somebody else knows better than you. And then I think the last thing I'll say is this: be respectful of your peers. Be respectful of your teachers. Along the way, there have been trainers that have taught me a variety of things, okay? And it might have been just a 2 day seminar. In many cases, that's what it was. A 2 day seminar, they shared parts of their training system that kind of flickered a light bulb in my head. And I said, God damn, that's a great idea. Okay, let me add that to what I already know. Let me add that to my lexicon. Maybe I watched a video of them training. Maybe I took a video course or something like that. When somebody teaches you something, or when somebody gives you something, you should acknowledge that. You should have respect for that. And, you know, especially if what you're doing is like primarily based on what somebody showed you or taught you. If you're putting food on your table with that, if you're gaining notoriety or, you know, you're getting, let's say, accolades with that stuff, you better acknowledge that person because that always will come back, right? That's one of those things. So I said something a while ago that I regret saying. I think it was on a stream a couple of streams ago. Someone asked me about trainers that impacted me, and I said, "Oh, there's a trainer, but I won't mention him because he annoyed me because he unfriended me from Facebook or whatever." Now, don't get me wrong, this guy, I learned like a couple of small things from him, and they did change some of what I do in training, especially primarily in the competition obedience side of things. But I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. You know why? Because regardless of whatever personal beef, and not that it's much of a personal beef, but regardless of whatever personal thing there is, it's not that's a disrespectful thing, right? We don't have to have a personal relationship with one another that's special in any way. Um, but we, from a professional standpoint, I should always acknowledge, what that person or those people have given, right? And the same goes for you. If you've learned something from somebody, if you're using somebody's system, you know, especially if it's unaltered, if you're using what you learned from that person, honor them and respect them, because without them, you wouldn't be where you are, and that's a big thing. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna say that trainer's name now because I don't want it to be like we don't have like a back and forth. We don't have drama. You know what I mean? So I don't want to. If I say his name now, people are gonna be like, ooh, and he's doing well. He doesn't need me to mention him. He's a very well known guy. He's doing well. It was just like kind of an offhand stupid remark. You know what I mean? But I will say that like any trainer that you have taken, if they've given you great inspiration that you are using, especially to put food on your table, if you didn't know anything and they taught you something, give them some respect. You don't have to love them, but give them respect. It's one of those things that I believe strongly in. Okay, let's see here. Good questions, guys. I'm not going to answer the stupid like, my 4-month-old puppy is not listening to me. What should I do? Um, can you do a course on human aggression? I already have a course where I cover as much aggression as I'm comfortable covering online. Anything more, I'm going to be putting people in danger, and I'm going to be putting dogs in danger, and I will not do that. How do dogs differentiate? I have a question on the power obedience. How does the dog differentiate between a pop on the collar in this compared to a correction? Well, if you took my power obedience, Matthew, this question is answered. But suffice to say that if you follow the system properly, um, when your dog is doing power obedience, he should know he's doing power obedience, and the context of any correction should make the dog more active. In regular life, it's a completely different thing. So if you're making the cardinal sin that I always warn people against, do not mix competition obedience with real life. I took my dog recently for an hour walk today. There was no competition obedience involved in any of it. Most people that screw this up, they're like, "Oh, how does my dog know the difference?" If you don't, if you're not following the system properly, then your dog doesn't know the difference, and you're screwing both those things up, right? My dog knows when he steps on the field that we're doing IGP competition style obedience. He knows that, and he knows that when we're going for a walk, those behaviors and that mindset and that emotional context that he places on that work is not appropriate. Okay, so it's just that simple, and it's the same thing across corrections. It's the same. My dog takes a correction very differently on the IGP field than he does in real life. Those are we cover this already. Would you go on Joe Rogan to talk about dogs and the real world situations and agendas? Um, yeah, sure, man. Like, I don't know anyone who wouldn't go on Joe Rogan if he invited them, but I haven't been asked. Have I ever been sued by a client? No, I have not been sued by a client. Um, who are some of the biggest influences you draw from to formulate your current system? I've mentioned him before, Don Sullivan. I really like some of the stuff that he does. Really old school kind of bird dog guy. I've taken some from him. Um, there's been a like Yogi Zank. He's kind of like a Nepal style trainer. I learned a lot from him. Um, I've learned a little bit from some of Ivan Balabanov's courses. Um, Marco Cosconsalo. I've learned a little bit from him, especially when it comes to competition work, primarily, and protection work. I've learned a ton from him actually on that side. He certainly helped to expedite my understanding there. You know, these are people that jump to mind immediately. I'm sure I might be missing somebody. I've taken things like my fronts and my dumbbells. I learned a lot from Stefan Schaub. I got to get Stefan on here. I got to talk to Stefan. You guys want to talk about a badass trainer and one of the best, probably one of the best, if not the best breeder in North America for German Shepherds? Stefan Schaub. Look him up, look up his bloodlines, see what he's done. I got a lot of respect for that man. And he's a cool guy to deal with. I like him. Listen, man, there's other people. I don't want anyone to think I'm disrespecting them if I've forgotten them. They know because I will tell them in person if I learn something. And I'll give them respect. I don't take anybody's work and just sell it as my own. That's not my way. That's not what I do. Everybody that I've mentioned, I've taken things that I've learned from them and then tweaked it and changed it or added things or removed things to you know facilitate what it is that I do. Um, I like Gary Wilkes for a lot of like the theory, like some of the theory stuff he talks about is really good. Um, yeah, I think that's enough with that. Thought on the Premack principle. Sounds like positive only shit. Like I've heard of it before. I never bothered to look into it because I believe it's positive only type stuff. Um, I think I have a rough understanding of it, but I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not 100% on what it is exactly. So I can't speak on it unless I'm 100% sure what it is you mean by that. So, and how's my puppy, by the way, Ty? Ty asked that. So I know he has a puppy from me. How's my puppy doing? Um, Nicole, I use a ton of what I have learned from you guys and always make sure to share that to hype you guys up like a fangirl. Well, I appreciate that, Nicole. I know we certainly see you and your dogs a lot, so we certainly appreciate the support that comes from your end. Do puppies tend to get more drive for balls and tugs as they have after they have done teething? Yeah, I mean, as a dog develops, you will always see more drive as they grow for the most part. Usually you're kind of at the top end. Yeah, I'd say around a years where you kind of see the drive, and then you know, not the top end, I should say, but you can see most of it by the time the dog's a year old. What was your biggest struggle starting out in dog training, and how did you overcome it? That's a good question. My biggest struggle, I would say, is figuring out how to give people what they needed exactly. Okay, so like people will give you problems. They will bring you a dog that's doing X, doing Y, doing Z. And a lot of the information that you find from, especially at the time. So at the time when I started, YouTube wasn't very big. There was not a lot of there was information on the internet, but not like tons like there is now. And there weren't that many dog trainers that were really being successful in the pet side of things, publicly, anyways. I'm sure there were, but they weren't like all over the internet. They weren't findable, so to speak, or as findable. So, a lot of it was like kind of trial and error and saying, okay, like what works? Like, how can I needed to craft a system that people could apply to just about any dog, a basic framework that people could work from to get a dog completely obedient, on and off leash, to get a dog to stop performing undesirable behavior, and to live the kind of life that people wanted to live with their dogs. And that's something that trial and error. It took years, and I'm still perfecting it to this day. You know what I mean? I'm still perfecting it to this day. I know what I want. I know what most clients want. But it's something where we can always tweak, adjust, improve, so on and so forth. But in the beginning, there was no framework. You know, you had a rough idea how to train X, Y, Z, but a lot of it was trial and error. And what worked for some dogs did not work for other dogs. And you really had to develop answers to all these questions. Okay, when I use, for instance, the pinch collar with three dogs, you know, it goes great. But then all of a sudden, the fourth dog, he's freaking out. He's biting the leash. He's trying to redirect on me. What do I do? What's the best way to fix this problem? Because dogs, you know, there are a lot of similarities across. Once you've dealt with like hundreds and hundreds, thousand plus dogs, you'll see tons of similarities. And the more you deal with dogs, the more you learn, like, that they have a pattern. They all follow very simple patterns. And after a while, you start to recognize, oh, you like to do this, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that. And when I do this, you're going to do that, right? So you kind of you learn the pattern for different types of dogs. You kind of start to be able to predict them, and then you start to get out ahead of them, and then you start to develop training that avoids certain problems that that dog will develop, and offer training, problems to the dog that are more suitable for that type of dog, that type of behavior. You learn to avoid problems before they even manifest as problems, and then when a problem does manifest, you know how to deal with it efficiently and effectively. So, but this is just years on a leash. Like, that's what that is, and you just need to get that. What makes Dutchies difficult for even experienced handlers? Um, well, I mean, good ones tend to have a lot of drive. Some of them carry some nerves. Um, a lot of Dutchies have, some handler issues, whether it's kind of unconscious handler issues where they'll redirect on the handler, or, some of them can just be jerk offs with the handler if they think they can get away with it. Um, but you don't see a lot of really good Dutchies down here, anyways. I mean, you see some for sure, but in Canada, not very many, and in the U.S., I think they have more. But again, it's one of those things where, I think people really like the way the dogs look, but there's the vast majority of them are not very good. Hmm. Talk about the video that was posted on the group page where the trainer was showing switch biting. I mean, that's on our elite group page. I don't really talk about, like I said, I've already spoken. So I did a video about that guy. Um, I did a video about that guy. Sorry guys, let me turn on a vacuum in the background here. I'm gonna move. So you're talking about, I'm not even going to say the name of the guy because I don't, that's not something I need to do. And again, I don't like saying people's names in a negative context. But suffice to say, I actually did a video of that guy's work. And I kind of critiqued his work. And it was one of those videos, where you like kind of react to somebody else's video. And I did the video and I released it. And the dude called me, and he's like in the UK, but he called me like, I don't know, like it was like a few days later. He called me, and he was upset, you know. And to be honest, I felt bad. I was like, you know what? I don't need to. I can say all of the things I need to say about switch biting without bringing somebody's name into it. I got nothing against the guy. I agreed with him about, what he was doing. I disagreed with the work that he was doing. But at the end of the day, why am I going to drag his name? There's no reason to drag his name just because I disagree with his work, and I don't think it's a good idea to do that. So I mean, I said kind of all I needed to say about switch biting in earlier videos. Um, Unrelated question, but I'm curious about your accent. It's really slight, but it almost sounds Dutch. Well, I'm not Dutch. I don't know. It's just the way I talk. um, yeah, no, not Dutch. I'm Canadian, my friends. Uh, you know, I was born here. I was raised here. So, yeah. Let's see here. Any tips for noise leaking in IGP obedience? Dog has high arousal and how drive 5 years old. IGP3 dog. I mean, it would depend where the leaking is happening, and it would depend on the dog. Some dogs, you got to let them leak a little bit because you'll actually get a little more out of them. Some dogs, if you make them quiet, you'll get more out of them. So it depends on the dog, you know. Depends on it's there's generally two ways to go. You actually, the more you reward the dog, oftentimes you might see that the noise reduces itself, and then in some instances, the dog needs a little bit of aversive applied when he makes the noise, and he needs to be able to pair those two things together and learn that he must be quiet and calm down. So it really depends on the dog and the situation. So yeah, I mean, oftentimes if you satisfy the prey drive, the dog may still scream a little bit, or he goes ah! Every time you kind of like do a position change or a direction change or anything like that. But he won't be like barking next to you. Some dogs, like for instance, right now I've decided to allow my dog to bark when I go pick up the dumbbell. So I'll go pick up the dumbbell and he'll start barking. Bark, 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 bark. I've decided I'm going to allow that for now, and I'm going to allow that until such time that I deem it's worth not allowing it, because I think that the benefit I'm going to get from him amping himself up in that place is better than the downsides I'm going to get for losing some points for him becoming vocal there. One thing I've learned with IGP is you don't want to search for perfection right away, because the more you try to get perfection, the more mistakes you will cause, so to speak. Sometimes it's better to let a young dog be a little bit crazy, be a little bit high in the drive, be a little bit hectic in the right kind of way, and then kind of slowly tone him down the more and more familiar he gets with the exercise, instead of trying to tone him down too quickly. Can you learn how to train a dog for protection by yourself? Can you learn how to fight by yourself? No, obviously not, right? You have to you can be your dog's sparring partner in the best case scenario, but you certainly cannot train a dog fully how to do protection training by himself. I'm 13. I want to be a dog trainer. When I'm older, I train my 3 dogs all by myself. Good for you, my friend. What you need to do is keep training dogs, and by the time you're 18, you'll be ready to rock and roll. Will you ever come to UK and do a seminar? If somebody has me, I'll go. I'm always willing, as long as things are right. Some people expect me to do seminars for pennies. It's like, listen, I'm a busy guy, like, I'm sorry, I don't do things for free, in that sense. What I do for free is available on YouTube. Um, you know, I have no problem coming to a place, but in order for me to do a seminar, there is unfortunately a cost associated with it. But it's a reasonable cost, in my opinion. I recently found a canine behaviorist on YouTube, I don't say the name, who says operant conditioning is not effective and science proves that latent learning is superior. Your thoughts? Depends what he means by latent learning. Operant conditioning is a very broad framework that helps somebody who has no understanding of what behavior is and how to control it, how dogs learn it, or anything really learns it. I think it's a good starting point as long as you understand that the theory in and of itself is limited, and that you understand that the theory was developed by somebody who was a utopian idealist, B.F. Skinner. He wanted to prove that everything could be done with positive reinforcement, right? So understanding all of that, it's a good beginning point to start to understand how behavior is taught and how behavior is learned. Okay, but it's certainly a limited thing. It's classical conditioning is important. Understanding genetics, understanding epigenetics is very important. Some trainers will alpha roll their clients' dogs. Everything on the internet is only disapproving it, but there must be a reason why people did this method before. What are your thoughts? I don't do that. I don't believe in it. I think it works undeniably for somebody who's like the dog whisperer, but I haven't really seen anybody else do it with any great level of efficiency. I understand why they're doing it. They're basically attempting to mimic 2 dogs involved in a struggle for dominance, and one dog basically pins the other without really messing him up. I've certainly seen dogs do that to each other, where they'll kind of get into a little scuffle. One dog will grab the other by the scruff and throw him on the ground and stand over him until the other dog kind of surrenders to him, so to speak. But I think most people really don't know how to do that in a way that they can actually yield a productive result from the dog, because a lot of behavior is not the dog attempting to be dominant. Okay, a lot of bad behavior, undesirable behavior, is not the dog being dominant. It is simply, the dog having a unproductive, genetic response to a specific stimuli. So it's not dominance per se. It's like, for instance, a dog who's reactive. Okay, most of reactivity comes from insecurity. He sees the other dog or the strange human being as like something that could potentially injure him or threaten him, and he's responding out of that insecurity. He's not responding because he wishes to dominate them, right? That's the vast majority of cases. So you're going to alpha roll the dog who's scared and in avoidance and offering a bluff behavior to drive the, threat away. Like, it's not going to be very productive in my opinion. I love my dog training. I'm trying to find my start. I'm working with some friends who have a reactive, anxious, bratty border collie. Good. Yeah, that's the key. I live in Holland, but I don't know where to buy a Dutch Shepherd. Any tips? My friend, you're from where they belong. You're from where they come from. Google CanPV. Go visit the clubs. I'm sure they will tell you where to buy a Dutch Shepherd. There are some numerous breeders around there that, can surely help you find the dog that's right for you. I would say that based on your question, you probably don't want like a top tier, working dog. You probably want something a little bit easy. Michelle, really appreciate all your help, your courses. Without a doubt, your courses have made me a much better trainer and given me confidence that I needed. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate your support and participation. Should have started with off leash first since my GSD is 10 months old. Fantastic courses. Your YouTube video have changed my training. I'm always happy to hear that. I'd like to leave people better than I found them. Looking to get into PSA. I've owned German Shepherds my whole life. This is from Nick. Should I go to working line German Shepherds route or the Malinois route? Also, more videos of the new dog, Max, please. So Max is, as far as I know, I think Max is sold now. He's going to actually be going to do, I think, PSA down in Arizona. Um, Now, I will say this. When you are going to do a sport, especially if you're new to that sport, you should probably look at what people that are for the majority part successful in that sport, what they're doing, how they're training, and the dogs that they're using, and then you should probably go that route. When you're new to something, it's not the time to reinvent the wheel. It's not the time to buy the giant schnauzer and try to do PSA with him. You know what I mean? You want to look and see, what are most people being successful with? What are most people training? These training techniques that are assuming they're probably going to be available to you, you know, what types of dogs do these work for well? Well, I think in PSA it's safe to say that, the Dutch Malinois or the herder type dogs are the ones that are dominating the sport. So those are the dogs that generally I would go to. I think most working line German Shepherds, to be honest, are not suited to PSA. They're maybe more suited to IGP, but they're not so suited for PSA type work. For sure, some of them are, but those ones are going to be a little bit harder to find, I think. So you want to look and see where's the success, how is the success being accomplished, what dogs are the success being accomplished with, where were those dogs produced, and then you go to those people and you get a dog for yourself, and you're already vastly improving your chances of being successful there instead of trying to kind of do something different. Ty says the puppy is doing good. Prey and possession is coming along every day, taking things low and developing him. Very nice puppy. Good, Ty. I'm happy to hear it. If a dog is pulling on a leash, this is from Hugh Manson Werner. Should you use a pinch collar to correct that or learn the dog the heel command? Because I've heard a French ring trainer say that. If a dog is pulling on the leash, you should teach him not to pull on the leash. I have a free video on YouTube how to do that. Hey, how's it going with Sky? Is she doing good with her obedience training? Sky is potentially in a new situation. We will wait before we confirm that. But for now, she's potentially in a different situation. So I hope she does well there. We'll see what happens. But she's a very nice dog. What can I do with my German Shepherd? She is reactive until I get her close to other dogs. She calms down and wants to play. I don't understand why. She's 4 months old because she's a 4 month old German Shepherd puppy, my friend. And German Shepherd puppies are, for the vast majority of cases, reactive. So probably you should start to think to yourself, if she's reactive, do I really want to give her what she wants in order for her to stop being reactive? What do you think you're teaching the dog? I have a female and male dog. Torn about which one to fix. What would you suggest? The male is German Shepherd, 1.5 years. The female is 4. Well, it's cheaper to fix the male, but he's 1.5, and you shouldn't fix the male until minimum, 3 years old. Uh, Female's bleeding is probably certainly more annoying than intact male. I would personally fix the female, but it's going to cost you more. Okay, let's see. Don't correct your puppy with a slip leash. That's not a good idea. It's a 4 month old puppy. It's a baby. Is French ring the best dog sport? No, it's not. Um, I have a Malinois puppy with zero ball and prey drive. Any tips? Let him develop, and hopefully it comes along. You can't put something there that unfortunately is not there naturally. What is the difference between IGP and Mondio ring? I'm hearing from the USA. They're radically different. It's kind of like asking me what's the difference between soccer and baseball. I mean, look up the sport. You can find all this information on Google. The hardest part of doing your training courses here in Australia is that the prong collars have now been banned in my state. Can you recommend an alternative to the prong collar? Get yourself a prong collar cover, and then you'll be fine. You can use choke chain, but I don't like them generally. I much prefer the prong collar, to be honest with you. You know, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's banned. Okay, it's banned. Who's enforcing that ban? How much effort are they putting into enforcing that ban? Pit bulls aren't banned here in Ontario, and I've been seeing pit bulls for like the last 20 years, right? I train them regularly here at my facility. Um, let's see. Hey, has any upcoming seminars in Ontario at all? Yes. I'm going to be doing a seminar at our Woodstock location. The date has yet to be finalized, but I'm going to do probably a 1 day seminar um, in my location in Woodstock. So yeah, we're gonna do like a 1 day functional obedience seminar in Woodstock in a few weeks. How can I stop the thrashing? You mean on like the bite? Um, Basically, stop rewarding it. If the dog's self-rewarding on the thrashing, then you put him on a back tie, and when he thrashes, you just pull back and wait until he stops thrashing. And when he counters, you pay that behavior. You just don't want to pay behaviors you don't like. Okay. When you start breeding your females? Um, well, there's the response that all the, know-it-alls on Facebook and these dog forums will tell you, like the dog must be like, I don't know, 24, 28, 3 years old, whatever nonsense they're coming up with. I believe last I checked, veterinary medicine has determined that, it's quite healthy to breed a dog on the second heat. Um, I've done it once or twice in the past with Malinois. I mean, typically I'll breed a bitch, once she's past 18-month mark and I have clear x-rays on her. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you are well. This is from Matthew. Looking forward to the course with Mace. Yes, my friend. Yeah, doing quite well. I hope I hope the dog that you got from me is doing well. I think the two dogs actually you got from me are doing well. The German Shepherd that you got, he's actually a bit more of a jerk than Mace was, but Mace has more drive than he does. So, you know, interesting little dichotomy. How is wolf dog trading different? Similar to domestic dog trading. I wouldn't say it's all that different. You're just dealing with a very different animal. But I leave the wolf dog trading to the wolf dog people. All right. Let's see here. I didn't realize you shouldn't neuter a dog until 3 years. I've only heard over a year. Well, Sarah, I would suggest you look at an unneutered male that is 1 year old and then an unneutered male that is 3 years old and tell me how different those dogs look. And then you will see that that dog is certainly not finished growing at a year. Let him finish growing. Let him develop his secondary sex characteristics. Then, if you must cut him, you can cut him. Having a kennel dog is from Michelle. Having a kennel dog, one not in your home. What is your routine schedule for them? Depends on how the kennel is set up. If it's a kennel where the dog can go outside, I'm less concerned about exercise. I'll take them out, usually twice a day for training, and I won't be too concerned. If the dog, has space. If the dog is limited in the kennel space, then of course you must really ensure that the dog is properly exercised and stimulated throughout the day. What's the best dog sport? It depends on you. It depends on what you like. It depends on what you're able to do and the type of dog that you have. So that's like saying what's the best team sport. Everybody has their own opinion. For me, it's IGP because currently IGP represents the most diverse set of challenges for any handler in dog sport because of the level of power, precision um, that is demanded across three phases: tracking, obedience, protection. All the other bite sports just have obedience and protection. So that extra phase of tracking is big. So it's more of a challenge in my opinion. Have I ever trained service dogs? Yes, I have. Are we able to practice protection work with a sleeve? No, do not do that. Find a trainer close to you that is proficient. You can run it by me, Yesenia. Don't practice with him because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to mess it up. This is somebody that bought one of my protection dogs. Um, you're welcome to bring him back too for a refresher. We'll happily keep him here and work on the protection too if you like. How do you keep yourself from burning out with dog training and enjoy training your own dogs? I constantly find new challenges for myself. And by doing that, I keep myself very excited to continue training. Challenges like Mace, challenges like my new dog Yaxi, challenges like IGP, and various other things that I do, a lot of which I don't video. Um, it just keeps things fresh, keeps things exciting. Prong collars are banned, e-collars are banned, and I still walk my off-leash dog in the city with an e-collar past multiple police officers. Yeah, well, probably because the police canine unit over there is using them still. Listen, I was in Holland recently. I saw an old guy. He was riding a bike, and he had like this big mixed dog next to him wearing like this gigantic prong collar. And it's like prong collars are banned in Holland, right? This guy's just riding his bike on the street, and this big dog next to him wearing the prong collar, jogging next to him. It's one of those things, right? Are you seeing an increase in demand of protection dogs in Canada or the U.S.? Yeah, there's a lot of people in the U.S. that want protection dogs. I think the answers, the reasons why are pretty obvious. It's we're living in unsettled times, and it's important to look after your safety and security, and a dog is excellent for that. What are a few different ways you increase the speed of things like sitting down? Well, you have to see is why is the position slow? Is the position slow because the dog doesn't know how to get there? Is the position slow because there's been pressure put at the wrong time there? Is the position slow because the dog is in the wrong drive to go into that position? So that depending on why will depend on the method you use to speed things up. Generally, for me, it's body mechanics. So how does the dog get to the position? Is there a more efficient way for the dog to get to the position? And if so, perhaps I should retrain that position with a different body mechanics. Then we can talk about things like opposition reflex to increase speed. The reward delivery, where the reward is delivered, is very important because where the reward is delivered will often dictate how the dog moves and where the dog goes. Right? Is the reward coming at the handler? Is the reward being delivered to the dog in the position? All these things will determine the speed of a position and why it's happening. Could you touch on how facilities should set their fences up? Make sure it's a good fence. Make sure it's 6 foot high. Make sure the mesh isn't too big that dogs can fit through it. And it's right down to the ground. Do I like classic cars? No, I don't. I like comfortable cars. I like nice cars, but I don't like. I'm not into classic cars. It's not one of my hobbies. What is the best dog sport for beginners in sporting dog trainers and most easy? I mean, there's lots of easy sports, like, or easier sports. I think on the upper echelon of any sport, things get very challenging just because of how many people do it and the level of competition. But something easy like fly ball, you know, kennel club obedience, stuff like this. This is more like it's kind of more one dimensional, so you don't have so many things to worry about. Um, you know, I would, agility and the lower levels, like things like this, right? Let's see. What made you want to start training dogs, and what do you believe made you successful? What made me want to start? I would say what made me want to start training dogs was I was just very interested in it, as you would become interested in anything. It was a hobby for a very long period of time. Then it became a small part-time job. Then it became, a bigger part-time job, and then it became a very full-time job. So it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't like something I set out to do. It's just something that kind of happened. PJ, a trainer has told me to put a slip lead on my 4-month-old German Shepherd to stop him from pulling. No, that's not going to stop him from pulling, and that's not good for their neck. I wouldn't do that. How do you do that ignition key? Buy my power obedience course, you'll find out. And that's on my website, shieldk9.ca, the online training. Is bite sleeve bad for protection training for the reason I think it is, hence having hidden sleeves, bite suits, etc.? I don't know. Is hitting pads bad for a boxer who's learning how to box? People assume, hey, let me see, let me. Everybody always gets mad when they see me training protection dogs with sleeves or police dogs or green dogs with sleeves. It's like, hey, stupid, we have to start somewhere. We don't put the dog right away in real life scenarios. You're not going to develop the dog properly. Just as you need to work on the fundamentals, you need to work on the emotions of the dog, you need to work on the technical skills of the dog before you start throwing him into the fire, so to speak. So this is why the vast majority of my training is on the sleeve. I'll tell you this. Um, a lot of people are so invested in the equipment that a dog is biting that they forget the most important thing. Why is the dog biting? How is the dog biting? You know, and I can deal with a lot of that just with a stick and a sleeve. You would not believe how many dogs, I have exposed enormous weaknesses in with just a stick and a sleeve. I didn't need to put on a suit. I didn't need canned curtains. I didn't need fireworks and gunshots. If I can just if I can show weakness, if I can find weakness in the dog with the stick and the sleeve, you know, we don't need any of that stuff. So people get so overly concerned about the equipment you're using. If you know how to open the emotions of the dog, if you know how to make the dog really believe it's real and also develop the correct technical skills that the dog needs to have, then the equipment you use becomes significantly less important. Do I sell young adult green dogs? I do, to certain buyers. What techniques do you use in order to get real aggression for civil work? I mean, I think I already kind of touched on it. It's just, it's not like there's not like a step A, step B, step C. I mean, I have a protection course that you can take, but at the end of the day, I develop I understand the drives, and I tweak those drives and open the dog up through those drives and teach them the pattern of behavior that I want. I teach them the technical skills that I want, and then we move the dog into more civil training if the dog's foundation is good. And most people rush the foundation, so it's not. Sarah asks, how do you keep a dog active, interested during obedience training, and how do you work on a dog keeping focus on you in public? My dude can't keep his eyes off dogs in public. Well, again, motivation and obligation. I cover these things in my online courses. My functional elite off leash obedience course. It's one of those things where, he certainly can keep his eyes off distractions, but he just doesn't perceive that that's something he needs to do. So I make myself unignorable. And I don't mean I bribe him into paying attention to me. I mean, I put pressure on his lack of attention and I don't allow him to self satisfy. You know, it's funny. I recently, in order to film something, I gave one of my dogs, Yaxie, to an apprentice of mine, and it's Aaron, and I think she's in here. I said, "Here, Aaron, take the dog and do this thing." And you know, I have her doing this exercise with the dog for one of my upcoming courses, and I wanted to film it. And the problem was the dog kept coming back to me and trying to be with me and jump on me and be active towards me because he just never learned another way. He never learned that there was an option to self-satisfy with anybody else or with somebody or with anything else. I was always the primary form of arousal. I was always the primary form of his self-satisfaction. That's what I represent to him. A lot of people allow other things to represent you know, satisfaction to their dog. And that's why their dog constantly seeks that satisfaction in those other things. I view my dog's energy belongs to me. His energy, and energy is what? Energy is attention, intention, okay, activity, arousal. Where's all that going? If he's directing that into other things, I am going to pressure that and then I'm going to force him to direct it into me. And when he directs it into me, I'm going to pay him for directing it into me. And there you go. You will immediately, the more you do this and the less you allow him to self-satisfy with the environment, with other dogs, with people, the less you're going to have these problems. And it's a very quick process, by the way. What are essential commands for a dog? I would say come, sit down, heel, kennel, place, you know, loose leash walking. These are the fundamentals. How can I get into bite sports? As I'm finding a club or good decoy. I mean, you gotta go to local clubs and see, you know, what's going on there, and if that's something that suits you, and if they're willing to accept you, you know, if you want it bad enough, you will find it. Do I like the gentle leader? If not, why? Because the name is misleading. It is a tool that works off aversion. Okay? It's not gentle. It makes a negative consequence for the dog when it does something undesirable, like pulling. If I told you every time you do something I don't like, I'm going to grab you by the face and I'm going to rip your head sideways. And by the way, over time, you're going to get a friction scar across your nose. Would that sound very fucking gentle to you? No, it wouldn't. Okay, it's one of these things. It's an extremely dishonest name for something that, in my opinion, you know, it's not an efficient tool. It's a tool that's very limited. I much prefer to use a prong collar. I think the prong collar is safer for the dog. I think that the prong collar also offers much more flexibility as a tool and is much more efficient as a tool. So, you know, the gentle leader is a useless piece of garbage that I think is suited to people that want to exist in a dream world. They want to pretend things are gentle and good, and really they just don't want to train the dog properly, and they want to live in a make believe land. Uh, okay, let's see. Any tips for how to start a dog training for clients as a part-time hobby? First, learn to train dogs. You know, and then when you feel like what you are able to do is worth something, then I think you know, then people will be willing to pay, advertise, see if someone will pay you. You know what I mean? I've heard from other trainers say a sleeve is like poison for a protection dog. Yeah, well, it's like saying pads are like poison to a boxer. Only if you only ever use those pads and he relies on those pads, right? You know, pads are really good for developing fundamentals, but it's not good for everything. My title engage IGP2 this year. No, it will be next year I will train Gauge. Oh, sorry, I will hopefully title Gauge. Am I from the military? No, I'm not from the military. I'm from Canada. Was I in the Canadian military? I was a weekend warrior for a few years, you know. I have a service number and an MOS, but I definitely didn't do anything with dogs there. Okay. Do I still have Blade, or did he get sold? Who's? Oh, Blade's with Matthew. Matthew's in the chat. Blade is. I assume you're talking about that Blade. He's with Matthew. That was year. That was a year ago. That was a while ago. Um, Is it okay to let my 10-week-old Dutch interact throughout the day with my 2-year-old pet Malwa while I'm at work? Hell no. Don't leave your puppy loose to harass your older dog. Crate the dog, contain the dog. Don't leave them loose. That's a stupid thing to do, especially for a puppy. All right. I think we covered everything, guys. I think we said it all. Does anyone have anything more interesting to add before I sign off? How do you become a protection dog trainer? First, become a basic dog trainer. Then worry about becoming a protection dog trainer. It's not a good place to start. I see a lot of decoys, like they don't really know how to do obedience. It's weird to me. Like I think maybe they just think, it's kind of cool to be like a decoy. There's no money in being a decoy anyway, so don't worry about it. I would focus on just becoming a regular dog trainer, and then once you're a regular dog trainer, the opportunities will arise that you can begin to learn how to be a decoy. I have a nice decoy course on my website, by the way. Oh, one thing I should mention, um, my online store is live. So if you want to use the magnet balls, the vests, all the equipment that I use in my training here, the collars, the leashes, everything, it's all available in my online store. To all people in North America, you can get one. My online courses, check them out. We have a lot of online courses: competition obedience, reactive dogs, puppies, functional obedience. So that's all there. And then we have three locations, guys. We have Guelph, we have Woodstock, and then we have Toronto. So if you're looking for in-person training, we can help you there. Um, okay, guys, it was nice to talk to you, and I'll see you all on another day. You guys have a good weekend.